Get moving. All right. Hello, everybody. I think they're still shushing some people down from the link. And so we're getting a little late start on this session, but that's okay because I don't think it'll go the whole hour. We'll get out hopefully on time so that you can enjoy some more refreshments right outside the door, which will be quite a bit of stuff. Diana, what are they going to have out there? Do we know? Mediterranean things. Mediterranean, which is good for you, I hear. You know, and beverages. We won't have alcohol, sorry. I know, right? Oh. But you can get some olives and hummus or something, and then go to a bar, pair off, group off, go off and, you know, enjoy each other's company at a bar nearby. Do they have bars in D.C.? I don't know. Oh, yeah, they're used a lot, Kevin Goldberg says, right? These days, they're heavily used. All right, so I'm just giving it another minute. Did you have fun so far? Was today good? Yeah? Great. What was your favorite thing from the day? Anybody? Anybody? Yeah, just shout it out and I'll repeat it. The keynote speakers at lunch, how were they? Yeah? Yeah, wow. It's so gratifying to see what we do matters, right? This is what it's all about. It's not just some esoteric law stuff and wrangling over exemptions and appeals and copy fees. And no, this is about real people and their real lives. We got to remember that. What else? What else did somebody enjoy so far? Huh? Enforcement. Anybody like that session? Yeah. What did you like about it? Good models. What model did you like? All of them. I'm sorry? Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania model, yes? All right, okay. For those of you who went to the session, we're going to do a vote. Which model would you want to adopt in your state if you could snap your fingers? Would it be Pennsylvania's Office of Open Records? Woohoo. How about Ohio Court of Claims, FOIA Court? Amen. How about Connecticut, the long-standing FOI Commission's been around 50 years? Yeah. Is this the anniversary this year? Congratulations. 50 years of independent enforcement commission in Connecticut, of which, frankly, most of the information commissions around the world are patterned after, yes? More or less? Yeah. I think Mexico patterned its commission after you. And alas, you know, RIP for them, but Connecticut moves on, carries on. What other thing did someone like today? The what? Oh, story ideas? Are you a journalism student? A journalism student here at Johns Hopkins? Oh, okay, a master's, great. So any journalists getting good story tips, leaked documents under the lunch table? Anybody? Okay. Anybody meet someone they really wanted to meet that they never have met in person? The FOIA terrorist. Where's our terrorist? Where is he in here? He's in the lobby holding court. What? He's filing just one request? You can't be a terrorist by filing just one request. It has to be more than that. Any other people you enjoyed meeting today? People you work with online that you first got to meet. Right, that's great. Anybody else? Oh, all the state coalitions for freedom of information, open government. 18 coalitions represented here. I'm so glad people were able to come. That's so important. And Megan was right. We too often forget about the states. And federal FOIA tends to overwhelm, which is one thing we really wanted to try to avoid with this. We didn't want to be one big DC vortex thing. We wanted it to be beyond that, because we all share issues that we have to deal with. Okay, well, I think enough people have probably made their way down, so let's get started. The agenda for this session, again, we'll try to keep it brief, and so people can get out to the Mediterranean food here. We're going to start with Kevin Goldberg, who's going to talk a little bit about Sunshine Week. This is the 20th anniversary of Sunshine Week, and he's going to tell us some things that even I didn't know about it. It's kind of interesting, and a little history, and then where we've come from and where we might go in the future. Then our note takers, our studious students, are going to recap the breakout sessions very briefly. So for those of you, who missed one, maybe you can get the high points, the cliff notes. And then finally, A.J. Wagner, Dr. Wagner from Marquette, is going to talk briefly about research ideas that we should employ. Okay, we're all here. We have a lot of ideas. Now's the chance to tell the 27 academics sitting in here what they should focus on. What research should they do and that they're not doing? And so we're going to brainstorm a little of that, which could be helpful, and then we'll wrap things up. And maybe a little Q&A and that sort of thing. So first, let's start with Sunshine Week. Kevin Goldberg, he's vice president of expert at Freedom Forum, which used to own this building as the museum, and they're still there in D.C. They have new offices, so feel free to visit them wherever they are. Where are they, Kevin? The Wharf. They're at the Wharf. Is that with that Ferris wheel thing? No, that's something else. I don't know. Not a D.C. person. I should get out more. And, Kevin was legal counsel for American Society of News Editors, which started Sunshine Week, you'll see, National Sunshine Week. And he was also former president of the D.C. Open Government Coalition and on the Federal FOIA Advisory Committee under NARA. And, he knows what he's doing. So, Kevin, give us a rundown real quick on as we commemorate 20 years of Sunshine Week. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really great to be here today. As I said, looking up, I can't really see because of the lights and because my eyes are not what they used to be when this all started, to see many friendly faces here. And so, David asked me to do sort of a history of Sunshine Week, what the origins were, kind of what made it tick, what made it grow, what made it special, and also what ended it. And maybe through some of these through lines, you can, hopefully as you're resurrecting this thing, thankfully, we can learn from the past and continue the strong points and understand just how much work it's going to be. So I will give a couple disclaimers. I am Vice President, First Amendment expert at Freedom Forum, where we focus primarily on First Amendment now. We don't do any FOIA work. And on a regular basis, we are FOIA, or that is First Amendment adjacent, so we talk about it. But also that this is my version of the history, what I chose and pulled out. Everybody may have other versions. You may have your own version. Alex may have his version. But Taylor may have her version. And you are all entitled to that, and I'd love to hear your stories as well afterwards. So where are we going with this? Before there was Sunshine Week, before there was Sunshine Sunday, there was the National Freedom of Information Day Conference. And I know we aligned the two, but this conference, held first at the museum in Arlington and then this very building and convened by Paul McMasters, yes, thank you. I talked to Paul a couple weeks ago. He's doing great at 83 now. And he really started it all before there was a Sunshine Week, hosting the conference on James Madison's birthday every year. And we owe him a debt of gratitude for pulling people together. And it was always an anchor, I think, a cornerstone of Sunshine Week. Sunshine Week or Sunshine Sunday started in Florida, and it was in 2002, and it was largely traced to two things: the 9/11 attacks and the death of Dale Earnhardt, and the attempts to get autopsy records and a stone wall that was put up for papers to get even the smallest amount of information. And that's really what created the motivation for a Sunshine Sunday that happened in March of 2002 and was kind of the brainchild of some people here. Tim Franklin, Pat Yak were with the Florida Society of News Editors, Pete Weitzel, who's just recently passed away, and I think everybody who knew Pete knows he was like just a legend of bringing this to the forefront. And Barbara Peterson from the Florida Freedom of Information Foundation. Or was it the First Amendment Foundation? I'm sorry, the First Amendment Foundation. And so Sunshine Sunday, a lot of people didn't know this, and I had forgotten it, was so successful in Florida that first year that over the next couple years, and that says February 2024, they should have been February 2004, were happened in South Carolina, Missouri, and Alabama. So there were other Sunshine Sundays before Sunshine Sunday went national. And the I guess, impetus for this was the Iraq invasion and honestly the Bush administration, which was creating a lot of barriers to open government as well. And people were really getting motivated. Again, we went motivated from 9/11 and Earnhardt to even greater motivation in 2003. And what had happened was there was a convening by ASNE, the American Society of News Editors, in what was called a FOI Summit, and started talking about whether this Sunshine Sunday should go national. And Doug Clifton, who was the FOI chair, and Peter Bhatia got together and agreed it would happen. And Peter really memorialized the whole thing, put it into play by saying in his incoming president's address, this is going to happen. And once that was said publicly to the organization, there was no turning back. Of course, it had a lot of help. And the Knight Foundation and Eric Newton put in a lot of money at the start. I think it was $100,000 a year to really get Sunshine Sunday and then Sunshine Week moving. And of course, that is, you need the motivation, but you need the money. That was a given. And to have the Knight Foundation behind this was huge. But equally huge were these two people, Andy Alexander and Deborah Gersh Hernandez, who was the first full-time Sunshine Week coordinator. And especially Deb, like the things she did, and we're going to see some of these in the next slides, having that one dedicated person who not only was dedicated in time, but more than dedicated in spirit and effort was unbelievable. And we owe her and Andy. Andy was doing this part-time. Deb was doing this, Andy was doing this as the ASNE FOI chair. Deb was doing this as a job, but boy, it was more than a job. It was a calling to her. And of course, the groups that right off the bat jumped into this. Everybody. It wasn't just all the journalism organizations. It was all the organizations, many of whom sadly are no longer with us. A lot of whom sadly are no longer with us. In addition to ASNE, Coalition of Journalists for Open Government, Sunlight Foundation. To name three that just jump out right off the page to me. But it was a multi-throated, multi-organizational effort that really helped the national reach. Here's I pulled this off the Internet Archive. How amazingly simple was that first website in 2005? No bells and whistles. I think the biggest thing that we had was the toolkit, which provided a lot of the background information for people to use and just plug and play. And as we know, that's a huge part of this. Sunshine Sunday was as simple as back in Florida, the original, on papers writing an article relying on open records and maybe having an icon that showed open records were used in creating the story, to op-eds. But there weren't many events. There wasn't obviously a social media. So the toolkit was something really at the emergence of what might have been called social media, but just allowed people in their papers to take whether it was op-eds and share them, or just stories or information or facts or events. And that kept everybody connected right at the start. And boy, were there some cool things that happened over the next 4 years. We all know about the hearings. We all know that literally the federal government would commit to doing congressional hearings, at least during that week. We knew that there were events at the Department of Justice, at the archives, at various agencies that happened, and they committed to doing this. They committed to at least talking about it, which was a huge step forward. But there was a lot of fun stuff here. If you look up at the Sunshine playlist, there was an open government music playlist. There was Sunshine Wheat Beer brewed in Madison, Wisconsin. I mean, people really, it wasn't just an effort. It was fun, and that's what brought people in. The fun of it all was really what started to kick it off. There was a Rabbi Bach did a Sunshine Week sermon in 2007 to his temple in El Paso, Texas, the importance of transparency to religion. I mean, think about all these different things, which are just so cool. And then it went international. I remember Deb doing some interviews with foreign correspondents and foreign radio in Spain. And Tom Curley in the AP got behind questions for the presidential candidates in 2008 and put their efforts behind that. And we had the Sunshine Week mascots, Ronnie and Donnie, the donkey and the elephant, to put this. Yeah, I mean, again, that was Deb's brainchild. I'll never forget how much she loved talking about Ronnie and Donnie. And it was, like I said, we were just on the cusp of everything. And most people don't remember this, but there was a partnership with the Creative Coalition where actors like, I mean, some of these people I don't remember, but there's still some big names here. Cameron Marenheim, Lou Gossett Jr., Richard Schiff from West Wing, who was a very big deal at the time, and Connie Britton, who's still a very big deal at this time. And they were in PSAs about transparency. I'm not sure how many of you remember this. It had fallen out of the back of my mind. That's like the apex, 2008. And then the financial crisis hits. Newspapers begin to contract. They certainly don't have the money and time to put into this. We were sure that the Obama administration would herald change in open government. They were going to be the most transparent administration in history. We heard it straight from his mouth, the most transparent administration in history. And all this came together, and I think people kind of took a breath and said, well, don't have the money, don't have the need. We're gonna push forward. We're not gonna push forward as hard. Deb ended up, we didn't have the funding for a full-time coordinator, and she ended up working for Reporters Committee, which still graciously let her spend about half of her time on Sunshine Week, but also meant that it couldn't be as big a national thing, certainly not an international thing, and certainly not something that had legs at least year-round, that a continuous operation. It was very much, about more of a 3 to 6 month period. And then, of course, AS&E merges with APME. And just as we were talking about, I pulled out a memo from about 2015 about, let's get the finances. Let's make it year-round. Let's get the support out. NLA, which was the successor organization to the American Society of News Editors, it actually disbands. I mean, it was on its way out by 2019 and disbands in 2024. So that brings us, I think, to 2025, and I go all the way back to a cartoon program that some of you might remember from 1998, a show called Daria, and she was known to be very intellectual, be very engaged, but also sort of very, what is my motivation here? And I think that's what we have to do. Remember, we have to engage with people. We have to get motivated, and I don't think the motivation's hard to find. So I leave you with that. Think about what I've just told you about where the successes came from, why they went away, and what we can do right now. And this is a great start. We have our motivation. We have our groups. Let's get out there and do it again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thanks for that. I've learned a lot from that. And now, of course, the Brechner FOI project, we picked it up. We didn't want to see this die. In fact, given the times, it's more important than ever. And so thanks to Diana Mitsu-Klaas, who was involved with AS&E early on, she was able to keep it going last year with us, and she's worked hard this year. And she's right over there in the blue, standing there. Yeah. And the Knight Foundation transferred their $500,000 endowment to us, which generates $20,000 a year, which helps pay for our outreach coordinator, Sydney Sims, who you've seen around at the lunch thing. Yep. And so, we hope it needs that dedication. It needs support. We have the support from our college, our university, and we're appreciative of that. It's almost fitting that it's returned to Florida in a way, right? But we have to grow this, and we have a lot of plans. We want to make this, build on it to respect the people who started it and all the hard work they did. And that's what this Sunshine Fest is all about. This is part of it right here. So, hopefully we can continue this and build on it. And so with that, let's talk a little bit about today's sessions, the enthusiasm of what you maybe saw. And unfortunately, I bet the biggest gripe is going to be I couldn't pick which session to attend, and you didn't record it. And I wanted to hear what the heritage guy said. And, and other things like that I'm going to hear. So I've asked 3 college students to take notes and summarize it for us real quick. And we want to start with Jillian from Johns Hopkins. Jillian, come on up here and summarize the 2 breakouts that you were able to monitor and watch.
All right. Hello, everyone. I had a great time note-taking and listening to all of you today. So lots of insightful takeaways, but if I were being transparent, when asked about my favorite part of the day, I'm a sucker for a good chocolate croissant. So started the day off right. So I will review the AI and FOIA and then the privacy and transparency discussions before passing it off to one of the other 2 note takers. All right, so for AI and FOIA, the key takeaways were don't expect AI to fix a broken culture. Fear trumps ethics, so we need to focus on creating a culture of accountability and transparency now more than ever. And to keep up, agencies, lawyers, and other entities need to adopt AI. We should design freedom of information into the system by default. Agencies should integrate machine learning and make the law itself machine readable. And we should use AI as an intelligent assistant. No more keyword searching as the default. Adopt more efficient ways of searching and using technology-assisted review. Train your AI model to use ranked order for requests. That would be a great way to make responding to requests easier for you. Use chatbots and generative AI on agency websites, and have AI explain requests and why things get withheld. AI may be especially helpful when explaining determination letters. And lastly, keep humans in the loop. Have advisory and tech committees convene and figure out the needed updates to the policy. All right, and then for the privacy and transparency discussion, while personal information used to be commonplace in our phone books, we are grappling with a culture of creepiness and using personal information as a punishment. It is privacy and transparency, not or. The US is an outlier in not having identity security. Other countries have already adopted standardized practices, such as using age verification. We need to balance providing knowledge to the public while limiting its use by bad actors. While sometimes we need to use personal information, such as when checking for representation bias, some things should remain practically obscure or publicly accessible but only upon request, such as hiding pictures of autopsies. Several great examples were provided during the session. We also need maximum privacy for individuals while having maximum transparency for the government, such as laws that think through if and when private and sensitive information can be used, especially for commercial purposes. And individuals deserve to know how and when their privacy is compromised. We need more laws focused on protecting against the improper use of information. And even when information is available, we should focus on making sure media organizations are interpreting the information truthfully. And lastly, we need more research into the costs and effects of the Daniels Law that hide the addresses of government employees.
Thank you very much, Jillian. Appreciate that. All right. Now, Kathleen Miner here, also a Johns Hopkins student, will summarize her 2 sessions. Go ahead.
Hi. So I'm going to be summarizing our sessions, FOIA and politics from this morning, and then Trump populism and the backslide from this afternoon. This morning, our FOIA and politics session, we had a lively discussion and some debate. Our colleague from the Heritage Foundation raised some very interesting points, honestly. Not everyone agreed with those. but the debate was lovely. So that session was really focused on the magnitude of the FOIA request backlog and the need for reform, and a lot of the session focused on how exactly do we best reform FOIA. We discussed the need for proactive disclosure to help decrease the backlog and more of a focus on proactive disclosure. The lack of resources and lack of FOIA compliance, plus the politicization of transparency in this modern day has created even greater problems of how exactly do you reform this. Our Heritage Foundation colleague did mention that AI and tech should be utilized to streamline the process more so than it has in the past, and that made sense to me. State public records can also be utilized to decrease the backlog because state records are often easier to access. And there is some overlap in what you're able to get out of those records. And then in the Trump populism and the backslide session, we focused on the backlog in FOIA has been a problem for a very long time. The backslide is not new. It didn't happen overnight, but it has been exacerbated by the Trump administration. So putting that in that perspective. There's also a lot of fear right now of uncharted territory. That was a major focus of this session. It's always been a battle, and so we can't let that fear and uncertainty be a barrier to us, but just kind of go headfirst into that. And also there is bipartisan support for reform, so look forward to that. The enforcement of that reform is always going to be the problem, but there is bipartisan support for reform, so that's something that we can focus on as a positive. Then looking at the historical context of Latin America and Bolsonaro's presidency can give us insight for the US rise of populism and kind of what to expect. And then we definitely need, before we make FOIA requests, one of the best things that we can do is do as much research beforehand and make those FOIA requests as targeted as possible in order to speed up the process. Because the more complex or far-reaching the request, the longer it's going to take to get that information. So you might get less, but you'll get your information a lot faster. So those were the key points from my session this morning. And then I'll hand it over to our next note taker.
Yeah, our next note taker is Abby Rio, who works at the Brechner FOI project. Abby, and will be going to law school this fall, so hire her when she, gets out.
Hi, guys. Well, before I decided to be a lawyer, I wanted to be a pop star, so I will take this opportunity to perform. Just kidding. I just want to thank Dave for bringing me here. I am from Miami. I have never been to an academic conference. This is my first one, so thank you, everyone, for being so lovely. Thank you. I wanted to start with the vexatious request session. This one was really interesting, and we started talking about how requests and dealing with it should be reasonable, respectful, and rational, both in our expectations and the way we connect with agencies. We also need to encourage agencies to provide us with proactive disclosure of records. This means maybe submitting a record, providing that information, and then posting that information, making it public already as something that was already asked for accessible. We need to focus on public education when it comes to the general public. We all here know how to file a FOIA request, but I didn't 2 years ago. I didn't know what FOIA was 2 years ago. I feel like we need to teach college students what FOIA is, how you can access that information, and how you can properly, like what Kathleen was saying, get what you're asking for, which brings me to my last point, which we talked about in enforcement, is how to create a proper request. Be specific, timely, have the details you need, who you're talking to and what you're asking for. So thank you for joining us today at Sunshine Week. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Abby. Appreciate that. All right, and if we do have time before, we may not, I'd like to hear your thoughts too on some of the sessions. But first, let's get to Dr. A.J. Wagner. A.J.'s from Marquette. He's associate editor of a journal we produce at Brechner, the Journal of Civic Information. It's peer-reviewed, and it's been around 5 years, focusing on practical research, including, for those of you who were in the enforcement session, Mitch McKinney, he's going to write up his paper for our journal. It'll be out probably in a couple months, about Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut's models. So check it out, Journal of Civic Information. And so AJ, help us poor academics figure out what to do with our time.
All right, I can do that. Thanks everybody for being here today. It's great to see so many different facets of the FOIA community here. I'm an emissary from the academic community. I won't list all the eminent academics here because I will forget some, but know that there are some of the best lawyers studying FOIA here, some of the best public administrative scholars, best journalism scholars around. So well, the point of this session was to solicit ideas for us to research so we can help you. I think most FOI scholars are interested in producing research that will further the law, that will produce more government transparency. And if you leave us to our own devices, we'll often do arcane stuff that doesn't do anything and it doesn't produce. So what we were asking for is for people to ask or to give us ideas for us to research that you can bring back to your communities, you can bring to your legislatures to improve the laws and ultimately improve government transparency. And I found it heartening today. We've seen all different aspects of it. We saw the FOIA champions at lunch, which I thought was one of the more enjoyable FOIA presentations I've seen in quite a while, and that's what I think most FOIA scholars are here for, is we want to help you guys produce that type of research. So we did send out, or Dave sent out a solicitation via email. We did get a handful of responses. I do want to open it up here. If anybody does have other ideas, feel free to reach out. Dave's going to do his Phil Donahue impression again. But I will list a couple. We had a couple. Michael Binder was a font of good research ideas. I'm going to give him the opportunity to take the floor here in a second. He's interested in military research and digging out classified records. He wants to talk more about separating requests for historic requests and requests for current information as a way of expediting processing. I think we all understand that delay is a massive issue and something that we would like to address. This probably introduces other issues as well, as it's one more process they have to go through where they have to divide which go into historic records, which go into the current records. I think it's an interesting and novel idea. He also has concerns about fees. My understanding is he'd probably, and Dave and I actually produced research on this, is that fees are probably not worth the work. I think this is obviously worth a larger conversation, but all the work that goes into assigning, implementing fees and collecting fees, never mind the idea that there's been an amendment to the FOIA that if you're late, which they always are, in responding, you can't charge fees, and we've seen fees dip really, really low on the federal level. Michael Binder also had concerns about the declassification process, particularly representation on the Public Interest Declassification Board. Another thing that he said it was lawyers that weren't familiar with the process and weren't responsive to what the public wants. Is Michael out there? He had some more ideas. Dave, he's down front.
Oh, okay. All right, more. I'm getting there. Okay. Pardon me. Sorry. Pardon. Sorry. Oh, okay.
Well, my experience has been in FOIA declassifying classified records, so that is my bias, and that colors what my ideas are. The fees in the federal government, in order to collect fees, you have to submit a sheet which indicates every person who worked on the case, the GS level, their hourly rate, and how many hours they worked. And of course, no agency wants to do that. And so most agencies don't charge, which is really handy for vexatious requesters because there's no impetus for them to narrow down their number of requests. They'll just shove a whole bunch out. Well, if you're going to charge them, that'll reduce the number. Another reason to hold down on the number of requests, this might be of interest to graduate students, is that we get requests, FOIA requests from graduate students. And they, of course, are on a real finite timeline. They're supposed to be done with their research and their dissertation within a certain amount of time. And if you've got these frequent flyers, frequent filers, flooding an agency with requests, it's first in, first out. And so those graduate student requests are at the end of the line, and they tend not to get worked on. And I would just have a lot of empathy for those students if they could get theirs moved toward the front of the line. AJ explained about the separating the current from historical information. The business about the PIDB, it's all lawyers. Nobody has declassification experience there. And two more, nobody does formal classified FOIA review, and that kind of training is really needed. And we should have a mechanism whereby you don't have to do FOIA. Oh, I hear the music playing. People should be able to get information without filing a FOIA request. You ask public affairs for something, and they give it to you. The reflex response instead is, you got to file a FOIA request, which shouldn't be the way it's done.
All right, thank you, Michael. All right, okay. Sorry, Margaret. Any other ideas that academics should focus on? Research. All right, just shout it out from over there. I'll repeat it. Okay, so see if transparency in states that have more transparency have more ethical governments. Is there a correlation between more ethical governments and transparency? And what causes more ethical government or transparency? Sure, yeah. Yeah, that's a great idea. We need to do that. Behind me. Oh. Okay. Oh, Megan? Did you want to go?
I would like to see more state-by-state research. I think there's often, people want to know what people do all over the country, and try to compare states across a bunch of different metrics. And as we talked about at the very beginning of this session, I mean, the state laws are just so different that sometimes it's comparing apples to oranges. So I'd love to see some survey type work on a particular state that goes county by county, city by city, and says how good are they at doing X, Y, or Z, or how is this provision used, so that you can really start to compare and show that it's a compliance problem and not a law problem.
So someone mentioned earlier about having FOIA or public records curriculum added to like the K-12. I'd like to see us connect with the push towards data science as a big major on the universities, and teaching data scientists or upcoming data scientists how to submit public records requests, like as a module, even as a part of their ethics curriculum. So not just creating code to scrape, but how to actually be a part of the like public records request ecosystem to get records that way.
Yeah, that's what led to FOIA Buddy, right? Where is Frank? Yeah, aren't you a computer data? And here we are. So there we are. I'm moving up here just to give these folks a chance here.
Best practices for rural, small local governments and communities with few resources.
That's great. Best practices with low resources. Let's see, did we have someone, Tisha from ESPN?
So we say in the investigative unit at ESPN that sports is not all fun and games. I don't know if you've checked in, but it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that hides, and it's one of the few places that you could actually find out information was through universities. We can't get a whole lot with professional leagues, but that is dramatically changing rapidly, and I would encourage anyone and everybody to look at the nonprofit FOIA laws. I say FOIA broadly, I mean at all levels. because I personally and the folks I work with, we're seeing an emergence of putting more and more public information into the nonprofit sector through athletic departments. And as I've discussed with David, I can see this branching out. If they don't want you to know about it, they'll make a nonprofit. And some states have laws where nonprofits that get government funding have to release those records. We can't get them. I cannot tell you how much an athletic director makes in the United States. We can maybe get it leaked to us. So if you think you know, it's because we got it leaked. I can't tell you about ticketing. I can't tell you about how much the t-shirts cost. I can't tell you about NIL deals. The list goes on, and I can see it branching out to pharmaceutical deals and any other place where universities make big money and don't want questions asked.
Okay, we're coming up on time. I'll do one more real quick, and AJ's taking all this down. And by the way, if you want to send ideas to AJ, email him. AJ, what's your email?
ajwagner@marquette.edu.
And I'll send that out in a follow-up email tonight to everybody. So you'll have that, and you send them all the ideas you want. Michael, you can go to town. Send them everything.
I've got another email address that I want. I'm just kidding. I'm serious. We're gonna put these in. We'll try to put some of these in action.
Yeah. Next week we're going to summarize this in the next issue of Journal of Civic Information, and I'll send an email to everybody with that link.
Hi, Liz from Pennsylvania. This is probably maybe an idea for a couple years because this is still new, but we hear all sorts of things about AI technology. This can be harnessed. This can be used to save time and money. It's a very intimidating idea to a lot of municipalities. There are over 2,500 municipalities in Pennsylvania. Some of them don't have websites. And so some sort of study that explains how it works, how you can prevent perhaps the very fearful situation which happens when people's social security numbers or other private information is inadvertently released. I think that type of study at some point in the future would help them feel a little more comfortable in pursuing that as an option to expedite the request process.
Wow, that's great. And I'm sorry, Bob. I'm sorry, Alex. People don't want me to cut you off, of course. They do. Oh, okay. No, we're coming up on time. But again, please email, and I'll send the email out on email to AJ, and give us your thoughts. We want them all, because we want to know what to do with our lives. All right. Okay, so here we come to the final 3 minutes. And boy, I've had so much fun. I couldn't believe that y'all came. I thought like 20 people would show up and they'd be boring. And no, you showed up. And it was fun and exciting, and I could feel the energy. And I want to thank, of course, our sponsors, the Knight Foundation, Sea Spray, ASAP, OPEXIS, SMARSH, the DC Open Government Coalition, Muckrock, NFOIC, University of Florida, of course, and to our staff, Diana and Sydney, of course, Abby, Chris, Tara, Jillian, Kathleen, and Shelley. Everybody, not Shelley's not staff, but thank you. Good job. Whew. And to Johns Hopkins, of course, for what a great venue. Thank you. Thank you, Peter and Natalie and everybody, all the staff that worked hard. And, of course, thanks to all the moderators and speakers. Pretty good speakers, huh? Yeah, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. So I didn't have to talk as much. So thank you. And everybody thanks you for that. And thanks for all of you for coming. And because, you're going to make a difference here. We talked today about problems a lot, right? And we heard common themes, and we grouse, and we're mad as hell, and we're not going to take it anymore. But we also talked about solutions. And I think that's what matters. And we had a chance to hear inspiring stories at lunch, how public records empower Americans and others throughout the world. We had the opportunity to catch up with old friends. Anybody catch up with old friends? Yeah. Anybody make new friends? Yay, good, good. That was the whole point of this. And the point of the networking, please don't leave when you go out the door and hit the parking garage and try to beat the traffic. Stay, have some Mediterranean olives and things, and chat with someone you haven't chatted with yet. Go up to someone, just say, hey, and introduce yourself. We want to keep this going beyond today. This is great in person, but we want to keep the discussion year-round. So we created a little page on the Sunshine Week website called the Sunshine United Network. Sun. Groan. And it's not fancy yet. You could throw discussion stuff in there. Alex, go to town. We will put solution papers and ideas and things up. We'll have upcoming activities. We're going to keep, the activity list for Sunshine Week is already really long. We're just going to make that year-round. And we'll eventually have kind of member networking opportunities. Submit your information, connect with others who share your concerns or interests. So we want to build that year-round, which is actually what we talked about in 2016 in, was it this building even? We had a meeting, Knight convened a bunch of people to talk about how to make Sunshine Week, re-energize it. And the conclusion was make it year-round. And so, that's what we want to kind of build on. We want to build on this energy, folks. Keep it going. We don't want to lose momentum. I hope you let us know what you thought. I don't get a raise or anything out of this, so, say what you want. It's a survey, a feedback form. You can fill it out now. I'll send a link in the follow-up email as well. But we want to know what you liked, what could have been better, what should we do it again? Do you want to have this every year? What? Yeah, I was hoping that wouldn't be the response. But no, in all seriousness, if you want to do it again, we'll do it. And, if you want to do it here, I think it makes sense in D.C., 60th anniversary of FOIA. Sorry, Megan, there's going to be even more federal FOIA stuff, probably. But we're going to try to really carve out the state level, local. I think that's so important. We'll see. And we'll take your suggestions. What session should we have that we didn't have? There's a lot that we wanted to do. We just couldn't fit it in. Maybe we go 2 days. 3 days? I don't know. 4, 5, 7. You tell us what you think. 7 days. Session straight. In the end, folks, I just want to say what we do matters. What you do matters. It really does. We know that. We see that. People are relying on us. People don't even know they're relying on us, and they're relying on us, right? Democracy is relying on us. It sounds a little kind of lofty, but it's true. It's true. We could have picked up other hobbies, right? But we chose this. For some reason, I chose this. And I'm glad I did. And I bet you are too. So there's a new sunrise, right? Sunshine Week, there's a new energy. It's in this room. It starts with us. This starts today. So go forth and make the world better. Go get some olives.